Hey, Calvin here, and this is my Apple Magic Keyboard for my iPad Pro. Now, if you've been following this channel for the last several videos, you know that last year I switched to an entirely iPad Pro first workflow. And part of switching to that workflow was enhancing my iPad Pro experience with some accessories, the most expensive of which was this keyboard. And this keyboard is expensive. It's $299 for the 11-inch version and $349 for the full 12.9-inch version, which is what I have right now. So in this video, I want to talk about my experience and also go over two real big questions. Is the price of this keyboard worth it? And who is this keyboard for? Now, before I get into the core part of this video, I want to make one very important note, and that is that this Magic Keyboard is an extension of the iPad experience. It is not meant to replace a desktop experience. So just keep that point in mind as we're going through the features, the designs, the pros and the cons for this keyboard. Now, to start off, the keyboard itself is a full-size keyboard. Now, if you're familiar with the Magic Keyboards from Apple, if you've used them before, whether that was from a desktop computer or on something like a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, you're going to have a very, very similar typing experience as those keyboards. The keyboard itself also has a trackpad, which is really responsive and it just feels really good. Now on the side, you do have a USB-C pass-through, and this is simply used to charge your iPad when you're working on this keyboard, and it frees up the extra USB-C port on your iPad for any accessories or peripherals. The keyboard itself does feature a fully backlit keyboard, so this is really nice if you're working in a dim environment. The extra light just helps make the keys look a little bit nicer, and you can see them obviously in the dark. Now the keyboard case itself is built around this floating mechanism, or this floating hinge mechanism. Now what's really cool about this is when you put your iPad onto the keyboard case, it sort of makes your iPad float in midair. Not only is this a really cool effect, but I've noticed that when I was using this, the key benefit here was that your iPad screen sits a little bit closer to your face as you're typing, and that's really good because the iPad Pro screen isn't as big as something like a desktop monitor, right? So just getting any of that extra screen real estate a little bit closer to your face while you're typing is always a good thing. Now, I know some people have some concerns over the weight of the iPad plus the Magic Keyboard. I will say this, when you put the iPad in this keyboard, it does make things a little bit more hefty, but I would relate the weight of the keyboard and the iPad combination to something like a 13-inch MacBook Pro. So if you have no problem with the weight and sort of the build of a MacBook Pro, and you're fine carrying something like that around in your backpack or when you're traveling and whatnot, then I think the weight and configuration of this setup is going to be totally fine. Okay, so let's get into the typing experience. Now, this is really unique and it's sort of different. Now, the actual typing experience of the keys, they are very, very similar to something like a Magic Keyboard from any of other Apple's products. So if you use a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, or you have a Magic Keyboard for your desktop setup, the clickiness of the keys is very, very similar. And that's pretty impressive, trying to put something like that on a very portable sort of keyboard. Now, I will say that the keyboard experience when you're typing is a little bit different because the keyboard itself is very, very slim. So the keys sit very close to the surface that you have your keyboard set up on. Now, this is a little bit different because when you use a Magic Keyboard like a desktop keyboard, the keyboard itself does have some height, so it pushes the keys a little bit further away from the surface. I've just noticed that when I first started typing on this thing, it did take a little bit of mental adjustment to get used to how the keys feel when it's so close to the surface. But I will say the typing experience overall is just really, really good. The keys are clicky and very satisfying, and they're not super loud. Now, they're not really quiet either. But if you're working at some place like a cafe or the library, I don't think the clickiness of the sounds for the keys is going to be a really big issue. Okay, so one of the biggest reasons you might want to consider this keyboard over some of the other ones like the Apple Folio Magic Keyboard or even like the Logitech keyboards is the trackpad. The trackpad is, honestly, it's just as good as any of the other Apple Magic trackpads. So if you've used the trackpads on a MacBook or you have the physical trackpad for your desktop setup, it is very, very similar. So it supports all the gestures to swipe between apps and screens, to pinch in, pinch out. All that stuff is there. It's really good. It is very tiny, so that did take some getting used to, But once you get used to the size and sort of the configuration of where it sits on the keyboard, it does make things a lot easier, especially when you're trying to switch between apps and you're just using the multi-touch gestures a lot. And that was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to get this keyboard. Is I know that the iPad itself is a very mobile first device, obviously, but when you're using it in sort of a laptop mode and you're just trying to move through things very quickly, when you're multitasking, the Trackpad just makes it so much easier and just so much more smoother and cleaner. And I love the fact that Apple finally added cursor support to iPad OS, and just experiencing that cursor support with the Trackpad on this Magic Keyboard, it's a really satisfying experience. Okay, so you might have noticed that the keyboard I got was the white version. It wasn't the space gray or just the black version, I think it's called. And the biggest question a lot of people have is, does this thing get dirty? It's white, so when you're out and about in a cafe or a library or wherever you're working, does the keyboard itself get dirty? I've been using the keyboard for probably 7-8 months now, and I regularly go out to libraries and cafes and work just out of my home. And to this day, the keyboard is still nice and white, and it's super clean. The keyboard itself is a different material than the cover or the back part of the case that the iPad sits on. The back here is sort of, it has this very soft fabric-y type material on it, whereas the keyboard itself is, it's made out of plastic, and it just, cleaning it is not a problem. So if you have some Clorox wipes and every once in a while it gets dirty, just take those. Or even just a microfiber cloth with some kind of cleaning solution. It works fine. I haven't had to clean it too many times. It stays nice and white, and it's just, the aesthetic is really nice. Okay, and you've probably also noticed that on the back, I do have a skin. So this is just a matte black D-brand skin that I've applied to the top and bottom of this case. And here's the primary reason I got this skin. It wasn't to protect the whiteness of the Magic Keyboard. It was instead to give this black and white aesthetic that I really, really love. I just think this looks super, super clean with the white trim around the Magic Keyboard on the back, on the hinge. The hinge is white, but everything else is black. Even the camera cutout is super, super cool. I love the black and white aesthetic. I think it looks super clean. That's really the main reason I got this skin. I love the design, and I think the aesthetic of this white keyboard against the black screen of the iPad is just really nice. And for reference, my iPad also has a matte black skin on the back, and yeah, the black and white is just so clean. Okay, so at the start of the video, I mentioned that the Magic Keyboard for iPad does not completely replace a desktop typing experience. However, it does enhance the capabilities and the features and the experience you get out of an iPad. Now, I will say that the iPad is still a mobile-first sort of a device, and it's still best used for apps like Procreate, where you're drawing or sketching, or if you're journaling using the Apple Pencil. I think for those use cases, you don't really need a keyboard. But when you bring the keyboard into the picture, it allows you to do even more with the iPad in a more efficient and productive way. So that naturally leads us to the question of, okay, who's this keyboard for, and is it worth it or not? Now, to answer that question, I want to actually eliminate who I think this iPad Pro Magic Keyboard is not for. So if you are a casual user of the iPad, and by casual I mean you primarily use it for games or just consumption of media, so you're just watching videos, browsing YouTube, browsing the web, you might be answering a few emails here and there, and you might be doing productivity things like being on your calendar or just writing something quick in notes. For those users, I would not recommend getting this very expensive keyboard. It's not going to enhance the casual experience you get out of an iPad. Now, let's go one step above. If you are somebody like a college student or somebody working in the academic field, you might be looking into a mobile setup that you can use as a tablet or as a laptop replacement. For those users, I would actually recommend you look at other keyboard options. So Apple has a cheaper version of a keyboard that is compatible with their iPads, and that is the Magic Keyboard Folio. That one does not have a trackpad, but it has the full keyboard, and I've used one of those before, and they're really, really good. Or you can look into some of the Logitech products. I know Logitech also has a keyboard that is compatible with iPad, and those tend to work fairly well with the use case for somebody in college. Now, the biggest benefit you get from those alternate keyboards is that they are cheaper than the Magic Keyboard. So if you're on a budget or you're just trying to save some money, I would look into those first before you look into the Magic Keyboard. Okay, so then who is this keyboard for? I would say if you are a working professional or your productivity workflow is primarily on iPad and you use this thing beyond just consuming media or taking a few notes, you could be the one that really benefits the most from this keyboard. With me, I wanted to switch to a iPad Pro first workflow, but I still have a desktop computer, as you can probably see in the background. However, I use my iPad as my primary or my first device. So most of my productivity comes from this device. I do a ton of journaling, note-taking, answering emails, planning out my day, going through all my tasks on my iPad, and the Magic Keyboard just enhances all of those things, and it just makes my life a lot easier. So is the price that I paid for this keyboard worth it in the end? I would say for myself, absolutely. It is expensive, but over the long term, you get a really good typing experience. You get an awesome case, and you just get a really cool experience overall using your iPad. And it can become much more than just a tablet. However, it will never replace a desktop computer, at least in the short term right now. I know iPad OS is just getting more and more complex, and there's more features being added, so I'm just really curious and interested to see how this Magic Keyboard will sort of scale and evolve over time. Okay, so overall, I love this keyboard. If you have the budget for it, you're a working professional, or your productivity workflow just requires a little bit more, then I would strongly recommend you look into this keyboard. It is expensive, yes, but you're gonna get a great typing experience, a great trackpad experience, and just the experience of using the iPad, I think, becomes much more fun. I will say that the iPad itself is already a fun device to use. It's super powerful, very responsive, and it can enhance your workflows in ways that just using an iPad could not. So I will leave it there. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.